Welcome to another series of the Master Plans, Plan for Healthy Community. I just want to welcome everyone to tonight's program, series, presentation, whatever you want to call it. What we do know, we're discovering a better understanding, or having a better understanding of this whole subject of depression, mental health. We just want to thank our presenter, Andrea, for presenting to us each and every night for this week. Tonight, we're going to be looking at, it's basically a continuation of last night's presentation. So as we reminded you last night, just to give you a quick reminder of last night's presentation, it's on mental health in children and young people. So your questions, as I said also last night, will be answered again. Please hold them until the end of the program. Every bit will be answered. So please sit back, relax, and just let us get our minds together and prepare it for another wonderful presentation from Andrea. So before we hand over to Andrea, let's please bow our heads and close our eyes as we pray. Lord, we just want to open our hearts and thank you for the wonderful things you have done for us through the day. Lord, for being with our mental health, being with our minds, Lord, for redirecting our focus, Lord. And Lord, we show up this week, we have been blessed. So Lord, thank you for all that you're going to do. Be with the presenter tonight and the content, Lord, and help us to remain humble as what we've been doing over the last four weeks. We're into the 5th week. Thank you for all that you're going to do. In the most holy name I pray. Amen. Just before I hand over to Andrea, I just want to read us a quote, a quotation from Marika. It's healing takes time, and asking for help is a courageous step. And as we learned this week, it starts with just opening what is inside of us, being transparent to a trusted individual, somebody who we think that can help us. So we just want to thank you, Andrea, and over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Just a second. I need to go back to the beginning. Just while I get to the slide that I'm going to start from, I'm just going to recap a little bit. So all week we've been looking at mental health, and we've been looking at mental health as a scale rather than you're either mentally well or you're mentally unwell. So mental health is a scale, and we all have mental health just like physical health. Yesterday we look at mental health in children and young people, focusing more on depression, and we're going to look at suicide. So we started going into suicide a little bit yesterday in self-harming. So I am going to start back with the self-harming slide today. But again, just in case anyone here is triggered by something, please self-care. If anything is too difficult for you or it triggers something, if you need to speak to someone afterwards, just let us know, or if you need to remove yourself from the screen as well. Do what's right for you. Okay, it's moving rather slowly, sorry. Okay, so this is where we're going to start. So starting with self-harm. So I mentioned briefly yesterday, self-harm is a deliberate act of trying to harm yourself. It's a way to really communicate a level of distress, which demands a response. It isn't a mental health problem, but most times it is linked to one. Amongst most distressing behaviors to observe, fear, anxiety, guilt, all that kind of ties in as well with self-harming. A lot of times people think, if someone is self-harming, then they're trying to kill themselves, and that's not always the case. Sometimes people do actually intend to take their own lives, but a lot of times self-harming is just a way of coping, and it's a way of really showing how much that person might be struggling, to the extent that words can't necessarily verbalize. And also with children and young people, they don't always have the language to really express what it is or the extent of how they're feeling. Again, especially in some cultures, children and young people might not feel that they have a voice. And if they don't feel they have a voice, or they've never felt heard, or that anyone's going to hear them, self-harming is a way, again, to really communicate the extent to how much that person might be in pain. Sometimes people do die from self-harm as a result of self-harming, but unintentionally. So this is known as parasuicide, where the intent wasn't actually to die, but they might have done something. Example, if someone cuts, they might have cut too deep, and that could actually ended up in them dying. So 13 things people who self-harm wanted, want people to know, some of which I've already mentioned, but sometimes it's actually to feel something other than numbness, especially children and young people, sometimes even adults who are so depressed and so low, they want to feel something else other than numbness. And sometimes to hurt themselves is actually almost a relief. It's a relief to feel something. For some people, scars are a visual reminder of what they've been through, and it's to remind them of, they've overcome something. So if, say, for example, in the future, they are going through troubling times again, and they think, they're feeling really hopeless, sometimes self-harming, the scars can just remind them that you've been here before, and you came through it, so you can come through it again. Like I mentioned as well before, it's not always about someone trying to kill themselves or end their lives. Self-injury isn't always a cause for attention. And I think we just really need to be mindful of the language we use as well when, we're looking at it in terms of, okay, it's attention related. Because sometimes if it is attention related, it's attention needing, not attention seeking. So there's a real big difference between attention needing and attention seeking, especially again with children and young people who may feel they don't have a voice, or they've never felt heard by someone. In some cases, it's a distraction from emotional pain. Again, if let's say, for example, if someone is going through abuse or some form of trauma, and the pain is too severe, even the death of a family member or someone who's close to them, and the emotional pain is so severe, self-harming can actually shift the brain's focus away from the emotional pain to the physical pain. Again, sometimes, especially with children and young people who have very low self-esteem or low self-worth, it can be a means of self-punishment, and that can be linked with a lot of things where they may feel they're to be blamed for certain things. I've worked with some children who used to self-harm because they felt they were to be blamed for their parents separating, and which wasn't the case, but they strongly felt that was the case, and they wanted to punish themselves. And the list goes on. There's so many other reasons. It's not the same for every person, and I think that's something we just really need to be mindful of if we come across someone who does self-harm. It's a way of coping. So if, say, again, like I say, it's to avoid painful memories or emotional pains, and it can be a punishment as well. In some cases as well, if a young person is feeling really out of control and they have no say over anything, or they've had no say over what's happened to them or what's going on in their lives, they could actually self-harm as a way to have some control. It's something they can control, which also ties in with children, young people who has eating disorder as well. And again, it's not the same for everyone. There's different reasons behind it. Intrapersonal is when someone self-harms privately and they do their best to hide it from others. So that could be self-harming when people aren't around, or it could be self-harming in a place where they know that someone's not going to notice easily. Interpersonal may be an attempt to attain something from others. And again, this is where it's often misunderstood as attention seeking when it's actually attention needing. And for that young person, it might be the only way they know how to really get that nurturing support that they need from someone else. In terms of the immediate consequences of self-harming, young people have reported they feel alive, they feel like they're functioning, they feel able to act, it clears their mind and helps them to focus. The release of endorphins as well makes them feel happier. It releases tension for them, release of stress as well, and also help them to feel calm and be able to sleep and focus. Later consequences are usually tying with guilt, feelings of guilt and shame, stigma, feelings of isolation, and worries, because they might start worrying if other people find out and how they may view them. If it's self-harming that is quite public, again, the immediate result is still the same, where it's a release, or they get something from that in terms of maybe that nurture that they really want or really crave, but then later they do still feel guilt or shame with that as well, which can also then result in them starting this vicious circle of feeling low or feeling unworthy. So in terms of protective factors now, culture and religious values and beliefs are protective factors. Having intact family, having a family, that really cares, a family that can support you, having good child-parent relationships and connections, or family connections, there's someone you can go to talk about these emotions that you're going through. Having friends and positive role models as well, positive adult role models. So that could be adults either at school or within the community, like church or any social groups, or even a neighbor. Just having a positive role models, having a sense of belonging as well is so crucial. I know I mentioned about that yesterday, but it is so crucial for children and young people to feel belong, especially if they don't feel belong within schools or with their peers. It's just really crucial for them to feel belong somewhere. Before I go on to talking about how to respond, I just want to kind of recap again on the brain, but from a more simplified and a different perspective. So imagine the brain, we know the brain has different parts and the brain is really complex, but in a simplistic way, imagine there's two sides. The brain has two sides, left side and a right side. Now, the right side is, deals with our emotions. The left side is more logical. So the right side reads all nonverbal clues such as the body language, emotions on other people's faces, and it feels, the right side of the brain feels the experience of emotions, whereas the left side is more thoughtful. It makes sense of the emotions that you're experiencing. So look at it as in, if you put your hands together, the right brain, emotions, the left brain is logical, it's factual. And now looking at it again from having an upstairs brain and a downstairs brain. So imagine a house, a house has got downstairs and upstairs. So the downstairs brain, which is the bottom of the brain, is your instinctive brain. So that part of your brain controls things like breathing, blinking your eye, you're not thinking about those things. And the upstairs brain is more around connections, forming connections and relationships. The downstairs brain deals with strong emotions and primary emotions like fear. So when children and young people are experiencing really, are going through a really emotional, or they're feeling really overwhelmed by their emotions, is very likely they're coming from their downstairs brain, which is their survival brain, the instinctive brain. When that part of the brain takes over, the upstairs brain is switched off. So, or if it's switched on, it's not dominant. So the downstairs brain is dominant when, let's say, for example, a young person's having a meltdown or a tantrum, or they're feeling rage and anger, and that's your downstairs brain that's taken over. So there's no upstairs brain where there's no thinking, there's no rational decisions being made. It's all primary instinctive reactions. So bear that in mind. And again, the downstairs brain feeds information to the right brain. The right brain is your emotional brain. So if you think about it, left, two L's, LL, left logic, right is emotion. Downstairs brain feeds to your right brain, which is emotional. When young people are going through really tough times, or they've been through a lot of trauma, or they're getting bullied, you're seeing really challenging behavior, the left brain, which is logical, reasoning, thinking, is not integrated with the right brain. So all those brain parts, for us to be mentally well, all these brain parts needs to be connected. They need to be communicating. When the young people are mentally unwell and they're struggling, the connections aren't there, so the brain is disintegrated. And that is where us as adults come in to try and support them to reintegrate those brain connections. Now, to do this, we have to think about the way we're responding. We have to be mindful of our own behaviors because we are role modeling to these children. So if, say, for example, I notice my child self-harming, or my child is having a complete tantrum or a meltdown over something and behaving completely inappropriately. If I was to respond with either shouting or telling them off, or saying things like, what have you got to be stressed over? You don't know how lucky you are. Life is so good. Da, 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 da. It's pretty much hitting deaf ears. You're talking to a wall, because their left brain, which is the logical reasoning brain, is completely disintegrated. All that is in play is the emotional brain. So with that in mind, you have to meet the young person emotionally. So that's where you now come in, offering empathy, acceptance, reassurance, being really mindful of, not reassurance, but being really mindful of what they're experiencing. Notice name what you're noticing, so that the young person can actually feel heard and they can feel understood. When that happens, you're connecting. And when you connect on an emotional level, that helps the young person to calm, and it also helps it helps their brain to then reconnect and to reintegrate together, so that they can now start thinking more clearly. Once that connection is made and the young person really feel understood, they feel heard, they feel cared for, they feel nurtured, they feel warmth, they are then more receptive to hear what you have to say in terms of logic and reasoning. Prior to that, if you go into with logic and reasoning, most likely that young person their behavior is going to escalate. They're not going to listen to what you have to say. They're going to shut down. They're not going to come to you anymore with problems, or they're going to try and hide things from you, because they know when they're feeling a certain way, they're not understood or they're not heard. So then they turn then to their own ways of coping. And for some young people, their way of coping is self-harming. If we're able to, to be non-judgmental in our approach, and to really show love to the children and young people and connect with them, we can then later, we build that connection, and with that is the relationship. We can then later offer alternative strategies to help them. We can work together on, what's going on for them, and seeking support, whether that's within the family, or or professionally, or suggesting something, something else that they might think would be useful. It's just really important, again, how we respond. At this point, I'm going to ask Andre to play an example of what I mean in terms of offering empathy and being non-judgmental.
No, you can't take my rocket to the top! Riley and I are going to the moon! Riley can't be done with me.
Hey, it's gonna be okay. We can fix this. We just need to get back to headquarters. Which way to the train station?
I had a whole trip planned for us.
Hey, who's ticklish, huh? Here comes the tickle monster. Hey, Bing Bong, look at this. Oh, here's a fun game. You point to the train station and we all go there. Won't that be fun? Come on, let's go to the train station.
I'm sorry they took your rocket. They took something that you loved. It's gone. Forever.
Sadness. Don't make him feel worse.
Sorry.
It's all I had left of Riley.
I bet you and Riley had great adventures.
Oh, they were wonderful. Once we flew back in time, we had breakfast twice that day.
Sadness.
It sounds amazing. I bet Riley liked it.
Oh, she did. We were best friends.
Yeah, it's sad.
I'm okay now. Come on. The train station is this way.
Let me reshare. I really hope it doesn't go back to the beginning. Yeah, I think it will. So I'm gonna keep my slides like this because it's gonna end up going back to the beginning, which I don't want it to do. So in that video, sadness was really just rather than going in trying to fix things or trying to make things better by distract him away from how he was feeling. Sadness connected to where the other character was and exactly meet him where he was basically and how he was feeling, and from doing that it allowed him to open up more and then to actually get it out of his system and move on. Whereas sometimes, and I'm going to admit there's times when I'm guilty of this. As a parent, I'm quick to be, oh, it'll be fine, don't worry about it. And it's, for the young person, it's not fine. And it's easy to say, don't worry about it, but they want to know why they shouldn't worry about it, because for them, it's not fine. And there will be times when that kind of response is okay. But when we're talking about, children, young people who are mentally unwell, or they're self-harming, or they're struggling with low mood, that kind of response is really painful for them. And if anything, it will actually shut them down. And they'll just mask around you if they can. And they will find other ways of coping, and usually those ways of coping are actually unhealthy ways of coping. So being able to meet them where they're at, you're actually telling them and showing them that you're there and they can come to you when they need to. Okay. So in terms of responding to someone who's self-harming, it does depend on, as well, it does depend on the severity as well. CAMS is part of the NHS that is for children and young people, that deals with their mental health. CAMS for me is their waiting list is beyond long, and because of that, you pretty much have to be on deathbed sometimes before you will actually be accepted through CAMS. And a lot of mental health professionals have difficulties, speaking from personal experience, around other professionals getting children into CAMS. So that is where, that is, I guess, one area in terms of signposting, but in terms of the reality, it's very difficult to get support through CAMS. And Another way you could actually respond with the young person, if they come to you, or if you manage to get to the point where you can talk about what's going on, is to develop a safety plan with them. That is something we do in schools with children, young people, as part of our work with them. But it's something parents can do as well. It's something anyone who's aware, they can do that with a young person. Whoever the young person feels safe with, they can actually create a safety plan with them. And these are things I've got copies of that I could send to anyone if anyone needs or want to have a look at what a safety plan looks like. But within that plan, it looks at identifying, what the triggers are for the young person. And it also helps the parents to know when is likely to be a tough time, when's likely to be the most difficult time for the young person, and identify how they can support them better. And also empowering the young person as well in terms of what they can do for themselves to be better. It's not just about what others can do for them, but also what they can do as well for themselves. In terms of the level of concern, so if a young person was referred, let's say either for therapy or to a mental health worker, or even within schools, the safeguarding team or teachers, we can all assess the level of concern. And to do that, I know a few people feel that if they were to talk to the young person about suicide, or to ask the question, have you ever felt suicidal, or or anything like that, sometimes people shy away from that because they feel that if they were to mention it, they're going to put it in the child's head or the young person's head. And that's not the case. A lot of times they actually want it, they don't know how to mention it. So someone asking actually can be a massive relief for them. If a young person admitted, or they've said that, they've had suicidal thoughts, the way we work is to assess that. So we would ask questions like, how often do they think about dying, or how often do they have suicidal thoughts? What are the thoughts? For some people, it might be, I can't cope anymore, and that's as far as it goes, so I might as well die. Whereas for some other people, it might be they've actually thought about how they would end their lives. If they tell you how they would end their lives, that's where we would then risk assess. If someone said, or jump out of a plane or something like that, how realistic is that? Would that ever happen? Are they actually going to be going on a flight anytime soon? So that's very different to a young person saying something like, I thought about it, and I thought I know exactly where I would go. They told you exactly where they would go, and they'll jump off a bridge or something like that. If they've really thought it through to that extent, then that's where I would be looking at stepping it up to like maybe a professional, or seeking professional support. And as parents, you can put in safety, precautions, such as making sure the young person doesn't have access to whatever it is they say they'll do, or they'll use, but also making sure you're getting support ASAP. In terms of children, young people, Hopeline in the UK, Hopeline is really good. They offer support to families who are concerned, anyone who's concerned. They also offer support to anyone who's feeling suicidal or anyone who's self-harming. And it's confidential support as well. They do a debriefing service as well, and they also do confidential therapy as well with children and young people up to the age of 35. But like I think I mentioned on Tuesday, they wouldn't refuse anyone. They wouldn't turn anyone away over the age of 35 if they went to them for support. But it is a service for children and young people up to the age of 35. In terms of do's and don'ts, we encourage people to do try to understand what stresses the person is going through, and always treat them with respect and compassion. Again, try not to judge, try not to think about how you would cope with that situation, or try not to compare it to what you may have experienced and you've never thought of self-harming, because it's very different for different people. And what we really want to try and encourage is resilience. We want to build resilience in children and young people, and to do that we need to be able to connect with them, to be able to support them with alternatives. Do offer practical advice to minimize the risk of self-harming. Do be available to talk, and be willing to listen, actively listening to what they're saying. Do make appropriate self-help groups, and do research if needs be, contact support services for support if needs be, or make an appointment to for the GP, for the young person to be seen by the GP if let's say, for example, the young person isn't able to open up to you for whatever reason. Again, don't take it personal, because a lot could be going on for that person, and a lot of times it's nothing personal to the parent or the adult. It's usually based on what self-taught they're telling themselves in terms of what will happen if they was to reveal certain things to you. So yeah, don't pressurize to prevent self-harming as well, because if you try to pressurize them not to self-harm, it's likely they're just going to do it in private, or they're going to do it another way without you knowing. So it's really important not to pressure them, and and don't make the young person feel that their self-harming is being treated as their routine way of behaving. The behavior is a powerful communication, and so it does need a powerful response from the adult. So yeah, I've looked at this before. And don't be afraid to ask questions as well, later on, or a couple of days later, or a few weeks later. Don't be afraid to check in on how the young person's feeling. Don't feel like it's, oh, I can't go there now. I don't want to bring it up. I don't want to remind them of it. It's so reassuring for the young person to know that you care. So asking how they're feeling now, or asking them if they've thought of any plans since the last time, just conversation like that will show how much you care, and it will also show you or tell you how that person may be feeling. And if the answer is yes, but you've not seen any other sign, it's, you wouldn't have found that out without actually asking the question. These are some things that, we teach children and young people to, very simple, to distract them when they're feeling really, let's say, anxious. So using the five senses, we always think of, okay, tell me 5 things you can see. So I remember working with a young person who was really struggling with panic attacks, and she was having a panic attack in one of our sessions. And we use this technique and we focus on, okay, name 5 things that you can see around the room. And they actually, when they start naming these things like chair, you, whatever they can see in the room, and then 4 things that they can feel, the brain is thinking, the brain is starting to think, and it's redirecting the focus to, oh, what can I feel? 3 things you can hear. They have to focus to think about, okay, what can I hear now? 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. And these are all your senses. We have 5 senses. So we start with 5 things we can see, and then it goes down each time. Okay. So some of the myths around suicide is people believe that suicide only affects those with a mental health condition, someone who's diagnosed with something, and that's not true. Suicide can affect anyone and everyone. Once an individual is suicidal, people sometimes think they always will be, but again, that's not the case. Most suicides happen suddenly without warning. Again, that's not the case. There are always warning signs, early warning signs. And I think the more we know about mental health, or should I say mental ill health, and the more we know, even within ourselves, the more we know our own warning signs, early warning signs, the better it is. And the more we can teach our young people as well to recognize their early warning signs, the better it is for them. And to teach them to do that could just be you sharing an observation with them, because sometimes we have to name things for them to make the connection. And pointing things out as well for them to actually think, oh yeah, I notice every time I do this, it's always when I'm becoming stressed, or every time I struggle with this, it's because I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. So there are always early warning signs. People who die by suicide, we hear this a lot in my profession, where people say they're selfish and they take the easy way out. And again, that's not the case. People who die by suicide, sometimes it can be, again, like I mentioned before, accidental. And it's more because they're self-harming, while others, it could be because they're so hopeless, they just can't see a way out, and it's not an easy way out for them. Talking about suicide, again, this is another myth. Talking about suicide will lead or encourage suicide. And in fact, the more we can teach and educate children and young people around all these things, the better it is in terms of preparing them and supporting them, and to build resilience, and to have, a good mental health, to be able to recognize signs within themselves and know where to go to for support, and what to do about things like what they might face later on. Let's get that one. So some of the behavioral symptoms of someone who might be thinking about suicide is, they might start giving away their things. They might start talking a lot about death or not being around in the future. They might say things like, when I'm gone, or, if I were to kill myself. Or they might actually start saying goodbye to their loved ones. These are all early signs. Not to say these on their own mean that someone is actually thinking of suicide or will try and die by suicide, but these are some of the symptoms. Again, social withdrawal, increased drug and alcohol usage, or the start of it, start using drug and alcohol, engaging in risky behaviors and self-harming behaviors. Again, when we're talking about self-harm, it's not just about the physical hurting yourself. It could be, drinking a lot of strong alcohol, or taking illegal drugs, or doing something risky like, can't think of any examples, but doing something risky like running across the street when a car is so close to them. Just little things like that could indicate that someone might be thinking of dying. The physical symptoms, we've kind of touched on this already, but like scars from the past. So these are some of the examples that you might see. Obsessing over the belief that the only way to end emotional pain is through death or through suicide. Just things like that is, we're to be mindful of as well. And I've touched on this. So these are some of the resources that I do have and could send to anyone if anyone wants them. They're really good to share with people who are struggling. These, again, many examples in terms of many reminders of do's and don'ts. Do let the person talk and listen to them without judging. Don't try to minimize their problem or to shame them. Again, it won't help a young person. And don't preach about suicide being wrong. 9 times out of 10, young people know certain things, and the fact that they're thinking about it doesn't mean, they don't need a lecture at that point, basically, and a lecture won't help at all. It will just shut them off even more. Tell them what they're experiencing is treatable and that suicidal feelings are temporary. Things like that is really useful, because what you're saying to them is, they can get better. There are ways to get better, and it's not the end of the world. And again, remind them that mental health is a spectrum. It's a scale. They can move up and down the scale. So if they're down the scale, it doesn't mean they're going to stay down the scale forever. And these are just examples of safety plans. Again, I've got these. Yeah. Oh, I don't know what I've put there. There's a blank one. And just to kind of finish off, I don't know if anyone's heard of the 5 ways to well-being, but just to remind everyone again, caring for our mind is really crucial, and it's just as important as our physical health. And I think the sooner we start talking more about our mental health with children and young people, the way we focus on physical health, the more they will grow up knowing and recognizing the importance of caring for their mental health as well. So the 5 ways to well-being are evidence-based actions that has been proven to support the well-being in people's lives. I have got the link and the survey if anyone wants to see that. So the first one is connect. Connecting with other people. For me, is again, when I was younger, it was pretty much connecting with God because I was brought up a Christian. Before I became an SDA, I was brought up in the Pentecostal church. So there are always Christian values from a very young age. So yeah, for me, connecting with God was one of my biggest I would say it was one of my biggest protective factors because I didn't really feel I could talk to anyone. I couldn't talk to my auntie about things. I didn't know, I don't even think at the time, I don't know if there were people around like therapists at the time, or even if there were, I didn't have a clue how I'd go about seeking support from them. And I just didn't want to talk about things like that with my friends. So being able to connect with God was my way of coping, and also writing. So I used to, like I said yesterday, I used to write out my feelings and then I'd get rid of it. And that for me was like massive relief. So yeah, connecting with people around you, and there's strong evidence to indicate that feeling close to and valued by other people is actually a fundamental human need. It is also a need that contributes to us functioning well in the world. Social relationships are critical to promoting well-being, and it does support against mental ill health. I've shared this was my go-to quote from the Bible, should I say verse. Every time I was going through a really, really tough time, I would always reflect on this, that, okay, well, God's got a plan for me, and whatever I'm going through, it's clearly not to harm me, so it must be for something else. And that was my motivation to use everything from childhood right up until even this day. Every negative situation, I try to use it in a positive way, because I reflect on this scripture and I think, okay, well, if I'm not going through this because God wants it to hurt me, then it must be for some other reason. And I always focus on the fact that God wants to give me a future. So if God wants to give me a future, then everything is for a purpose. And that's my go-to quote. So I've got that in the house as well, like on my wall. It's a good reminder for me. At the moment in the UK, 60% of people aged 18 to 34 report feeling lonely. And which is quite 60%, that's massive. And in the US, 46% of the entire population feels lonely. And what is really crucial as well to be mindful of, feeling lonely is different to being alone. I'm someone who, I love my own company and I like being on my own. I like being around people as well, but I do love being on my own. That is different to feeling lonely. Now, someone could be around a lot of people every day and still feel really, really isolated and alone. So it's just crucial to kind of get that distinction in. So ways you could actually make new connections. You could try maybe talking to someone instead of sending an email. Be brave and speak to someone new. Do some volunteering. If you're still working, or if you drive to work, maybe offer and give someone a lift so that you can actually connect with that person. Or take time to get to know your neighbors, or take time to get to know, your children's friends, speak to them, and trying to connect and really listen to how they're doing. If you ask how they're doing, actually listen to that. The second one is exercise. So research shows that, regular physical activity is actually associated with lower rates of depression and anxiety across all age group. So that's young people and adults. Exercise is really crucial. And again, in terms of God's plan, daily exercise is something that is essential. Exercise also actually slow down, age-related cognitive decline, such as maybe dementia, and it promotes well-being. And research has actually shown that exercising every day, and it doesn't have to be anything drastic. It could just be, taking the stairs instead of a lift, or going for a walk around your garden, going for a walk around your house. Exercise actually slows brain aging by 10 years. So some examples, again, you could come, if you take the bus to, when you're going shopping or when you're going to work, you could come off the bus a few stops early so you can walk. You could do some stretches before work. Or you can even go for a walk on your lunch break. That's something that I'm something new that I'm trying to do, which is to go for a walk during my lunch break. So far, connecting with others, exercise, and the third one is taking notice. Reminding yourself to take notice can strengthen your awareness. And studies has actually shown that when we're taking, when we're taking in the moment and when we're aware of what we're doing in the present, it actually enhances our well-being, and it enhances your self-understanding as well. So for example, if you're going for a walk, and to me, when I'm out in nature, it's just really peaceful and it's really relaxing, and it helps to clear my head. It helps me to think. If I'm feeling anxious about anything, just going for a walk outside really helps with that. And I come back in and I feel refreshed. So going out, and it also kind of gives you this appreciation of life, because you're seeing life, within nature, you're always seeing life. So it's really important as well to take notice. Yeah, and that's just an example there. Sorry. And these are just examples of taking notice. Don't know what's happened to my presentation. Things have moved around. You could take a different route to work. You could try eating somewhere new. Decluttering once in a while. That's really good for the mind as well. And the fourth one is giving. Research actually shown as well that, when we give, participation in social and community life attracts a lot of attention in the field of well-being research, and individuals who report a greater interest in helping others are more likely to feel happy themselves. So there's something in giving that actually helps your well-being, because the act of giving in itself tend to make others feel better, and then there's something about that makes people feel happy, and researchers also back this up as well. So my kind of ending challenge to the week, over the 6 week, is an act of kindness. If you could try and do one thing over the one thing a week for 6 weeks, just one act of kindness, and it could be being present to listen to someone, or it could be helping someone with something. It could be anything, but giving is a really it's really strongly connected to having a good well-being. Giving your time to someone, these are just examples. giving your time to someone. You could donate to charity, you could go and volunteer somewhere. All these things, again, promotes to positive well-being. And the final one is keep learning. So we've looked at connecting with others, exercise to keep both your mind and body well, taking notice. So being present in the moment rather than, thinking a lot about the problems or things in the past that you can't change, being present in the moment, giving, supporting others. And the final one is keep learning. Continued learning in life enhances self-esteem, and evidence have suggested that the activities to engage in work and education can actually lift people out of depression as well. Setting goals is strongly associated with higher level of well-being. So that's, another maybe mini activity to try and learn something new every week if possible. And that pretty much brings it to the end of my presentations.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Excuse me. Andrew, I'm gonna be a bit personal tonight, putting myself and yourself in the mix based on your presentation. I can remember coming from, as I said earlier up in the week, I was coming from abused home where my mom was being abused by my stepfather, and the circle that I had, as I said, I was a secret box for my mom. I was holding all my mom's secret. Little kid. At that time, the support of counseling wasn't there within the Caribbean society. But then I was going to school, but the teachers were telling, because of my problems at home, that was affecting my mental health. And the teachers were saying to my mom, you need to stop this kid from coming to school because he's not learning. It got to a point where I decided to take my life in that sense. What do you, there are many other people. I basically knew how I got over from my hurdles. I'm a Christian, but somebody who's not a Christian, how do you deal with something like that? Yeah,
wow. Firstly, thank you for sharing that, because that couldn't have been easy. It varies, I think, because now there's so much out there in terms of support, and it's knowing who to go to for support. It's knowing how to get the support. And if, say, for example, now I hope nowadays, if that was, let's say that's your example was happening right now, I'd hope that the teachers wouldn't have turned you away, because coming from working in schools at the moment, we do get a lot of that. The children that I work with are children who are coming from traumatic backgrounds, and abusive backgrounds, and it's SEN, special education needs schools. So when things like when the children aren't learning in school, we first then look at, okay, they're not ready to learn. They can't learn because they're stuck in their instinctive brain, which is their survival brain. And if you've got that, if a child has got that going on at home, remember the brain, a young person's brain isn't fully developed until their early 20s. So imagine a house, right? Downstairs is completed and upstairs is still under construction. It's not completed yet. You might have one wall, but the rest isn't developed yet. So if the young person if the part of the brain that is being used is the downstairs brain, we can't expect learning to take place. So the adult now need to come and support those neurons in the brain, the upstairs brain, to build. And the way to do that is focusing on the young person's mental health first, I would take that young person out of the classroom situation or the classroom environment, and I would start building connections with that young person to build those part of his brain and to help support with the emotions, to help support with making sense of what's happening. When a young person's going through all those abuse at home, the part of the brain that is working is purely emotional, and the logic side, it's not connected. So us as adults need to support the young person to be able to support their brain to be able to make sense of the emotion. So in other words, process what's happening so that they can then get to a point where they can actually be ready to learn. With that going on, it's unrealistic to expect the young person to be in the frame of mind to learn. So I personally wouldn't be sending the young person away. Or be doing emotional work with the young person, or the teacher would. We're quite fortunate because, you know, we're upskilling the teachers in terms of trauma, in terms of attachment, in terms of mental health, so that they can spot these things and deal with them as well, to support. And that's where safeguarding comes in as well here, because I don't know about other countries, but, you know, in terms of safeguarding, that's where, you know, social workers would start working with the home, and would also start working with the mum to support the mum, to empower the mum, and hopefully try and make things different. Or I don't want to talk about going down the route of removing the young person, but yeah, I don't know what, in terms of Jamaica, I don't know what, you know, I'm not sure what the systems are like out there at the moment. I was very young when I left Jamaica. But to give another example, I lost my mum from domestic violence as well.
Yeah.
And at a young age, I didn't have a clue how to verbalize anything I was feeling. I didn't even understand what I was feeling. And anyone who's been here since Sunday will remember me saying I had a phobia of lizards. I still have a phobia of lizards. The reason why that is because when it was my mother's funeral, and there was stuff around her funeral, they wanted to, I think they wanted to protect us from it, so we weren't allowed to go or be a part of it. Because of that, and my brother and I, we actually started killing lizards. We started killing lizards, and we put them in matchstick boxes, and then we created funerals, and we were burying them, and we were having funerals for these lizards. And that started right after my mum's death, and we couldn't be a part of the funeral, but we knew something. We knew what was going on, but we couldn't verbalize it. And then at the time, children weren't heard. You know, we had no voice, so our behavior pretty much act out what was going on for us. Now at the time, luckily, the more in terms of professionally, as I was studying and growing, I was understanding more and more about my own childhood and my own traumas. But at the time, if my grandma or the family members saw us doing that, we would have been labeled bad kids, terrible kids, would have been beaten, and all that, when all we needed really was nurturing, because we've experienced something really traumatic. And that's where we have to be really mindful not to label kids, as bad kids or naughty kids, because they will wear those labels and it will affect their self-esteem, and they will feel that they will believe deep down, especially if it's coming from their trusted, if it's coming from the caregivers, the trusted members of family, they're going to believe that, and they're going to grow up thinking that they're bad, and they will fulfill that or try to fulfill that, which then becomes, yeah.
I was going to go on to that question in terms of because we have our parents, older ones. I'm not saying that all of our parents, but sometimes you hear that loosey sentence, you're just like your father. Your father probably would have been a failure, or you just like your brother. Your brother probably was a mother or something.
Yeah.
And it comes back to the point of that stuff being seasoned in your mind. How can we break? It's something deep, because it's something that loosely, it's a sentence that loosely just put out there by the older ones. Well, even parents, I'm not going to say the older ones, but just throw at for children just like that at times. Is that something? Is it something? I know culture is very deep, and the barriers are very, very, very much there, like a brick wall, just don't want to fall. How do we get to a point of breaking those cultural habits?
I think it's things like this that you're doing within the community. It's raising awareness, it's raising alternative thinking, it's presenting facts about how the brain works, because I heard that all, growing up, and children still hear it, and it's not just parents. Even when peers say things to peers, they believe it. There was a young person who I'd recently worked with, who his friend had basically told him he was fat, and he had no issues with his image prior to that, but it really sunk deep for him. And we noticed since then he avoids to join in PE because he doesn't want to change into the PE outfit. So it's not just it's not just the parents, for example. It's really trying to raise awareness about how these things actually affect people. And I'm really mindful that I wouldn't want any parent here to start feeling guilty or feeling bad.
Yeah.
Because we're human as well. We say things so lightly, and sometimes we don't realize how cutting it can be. And sometimes I think it's being role model and admitting our own faults as well, admitting our mistakes. I think I remember a time I actually said to Pearl, and it just came out. I can't remember what it was she did, and I said something like, I think I said something like, "Don't be stupid" or something. I can't remember exactly. And straight away I thought about it, and I corrected myself, and I said to her, "No, I'm sorry, I don't mean you're not stupid, but," and then I explained, but I really made sure I get across to her that she's not stupid, because I would not want her to start thinking, "Oh, I'm stupid." Because when they start wearing those kind of labels, it massively affects their confidence and things that they're capable of. Because they believe they're not capable, they don't achieve. And going back to how powerful the mind is.
Yeah. Next one.
Yeah. And we can't undo. We can't stop people out there saying things, but what we can do is feed a lot of positives. We can feed a lot of positives to children and young people. We can really boost their confidence, and really get them to believe that they can do things, they can achieve, and things like or you're just like your father. If you're just like your father is a positive thing, then great. If it's a negative thing, we kind of need to move away from that.
Yeah, broken homes and single parent. Have to take the time out sometimes. There's a lot of focus sometimes on the financial aspect of providing for that child and not hitting hard at any parent, because look, in a diverse culture like what we have here in the UK, it's always, you always undergo. So there's little time to even think about providing that emotional support to your child. Sometimes when
Yeah.
you're off, you will just probably have, say, okay, go into the park or whatever. How do you emotionally meet your child mental health issues when you're sometimes when you always undergo? How
Yeah.
also, like, what's the impact of that on the child also?
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, it's hard. It is really hard for single parents, because sorry, I'm not. Can you hear my little boy?
Yeah,
Can
I
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I'm. Do you mind if I just get him? He'll be quiet. He'll sit with me because
It's fine,
he's
yeah.
distracted. I won't be a second. Sorry. Um.
So as the question is asked, what's the impact of um, the issues surrounding single parents on a child's mental health? We know how tough it can be at times, being a single parent. It's like you have to double up on everything, providing that emotional support, financial support, every bit of the support to that child, but still you always have to be on the go. But also there's a spin-off of you not taking care of your mental health issues. And I guess when Andrew's back, these are some of the things that should probably unfold to us, how we handle those sort of situation. I noticed that a hands up by CP. Just after you finish, just after Andrew finished answering the questions, we'll take your question just after she finished answering this question.
Sorry.
You're welcome.
Sorry about that. Yeah, do you mind? Oh, yes. So the question which was around single parenting. One, it's really, really hard. It's really hard because, especially in this society, you have to juggle the financial side. You have to keep a roof over your head. You have to provide food for your family. And no parent, most parents don't wake up and decide that they want to be a single parent, but then circumstances happen and that's what they're dealing with. I think it's a matter of, making time. Sometimes you have to really make time. And even if that's a matter of, okay, I'm working Monday to Friday, but every Sunday or every Saturday it's going to be family time, and really focus on that. But it's so crucial to make time, even if it's 30 minutes, even if it's 30 minutes, even if the family time is tea time and you sit together and find out about the young person's day, find out what's going on for them, what difficulties they've had, because 30 minutes is
Vital.
Yeah, it's vital, because children need that. They need the nurturing, they need the attention. We're social beings and children needs that attention. Yeah, and that's where the attention needing comes in. If they're not getting attention, the attention that they need, they start attention needing, and usually it's negative behavior, because negative behavior gets mommy's attention. It gets everyone's attention. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sippy, you can unmute your mic, and you can ask your question.
Yeah, good evening. And thank you, Andrea, for what you're presenting, because a lot of these issues they're always taboo. and there's always miscommunication. And I'd also want to say that before I go to my question, I think it's important to make sure that we don't view single parents as being no good, because so many of us grew up in families going way back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, where it was single parents who brought us up. And we didn't all have mental health problems. So it's just an acknowledgement there, and well done to the single parents who are doing what is a job for two people. But my question really was just to broaden things a little bit, and it's a bit of a conundrum which kind of disturbs my mind a little bit. So here we are as a body of people. We're talking about some really important issues. You've given us a lot of information about agencies, signposting basically to a whole range of things that we can go to. And then I suddenly realized that the places that you are pointing to, so many of us work in those places. And it just confuses me as to why we're referring ourselves to ourselves, and yet the body that we come from can't deal with the issue. So I was wondering whether or not you have any practical steps that maybe as a body we could do to make ourselves more responsible for what we see going on, not just to our own body, but to the communities at large. Because for some reason, it's a taboo to discuss it, and yet we take employment from it. And for me, that's just, it doesn't match. The idea doesn't match. So is there anything that you would maybe say to us as a group that we can collectively do to start to deal with some of the issues that you've raised?
Well, first I'm going to say, thank you about the acknowledgement and the shout out as well to single parents, because it's true. It's not, it's not all negative, and there's so many wonderful single parents out there. I'm glad you've asked that question, because there was a question that was asked yesterday that actually got me thinking, why are we not supporting this? Why are we not having this support ourselves within our community? As a body, can we not offer this support? As a body, there's so many of us who are trained in this area. Can we not come together and actually support our children, young people, and the community as well? So in terms of practical steps, I think it's something that we can actually go back to in terms of, and I'm talking now in terms of as a church, to go back to and actually look at what can we do for mental health? How can we actually build relationships with children and young people in our church and in our community? And how can we, make them feel belong, so that we can support their well-being, and we can support the families as well. The families who are struggling. Again, it's not all families are going to be struggling, but the families who are struggling, how can we support their well-being, as well as help those who aren't struggling to maintain, their well-being. So I think in terms of practicalities, we can actually start doing more with children and young people, whether that's to have clubs or social groups or mental health groups that we can do with them, which is around awareness, but creatively, and at the same time they enable them to feel connected. I think there's definitely things we should be doing going forward.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you for that. I was just going to say that we've known this for a long time, haven't we? So there's the old African proverb that it takes a whole village to bring up a child. So if people are struggling, why wouldn't the whole community come together to help that? And it goes back to what you said about the single parent discussion, Von. If a parent is struggling for time and resource, and they're part of a bigger community, then the community should be stepping in.
Yeah, I agree. I massively agree. Because again, in terms of families, it's not just down to the mother. It's not just down to the father. And again, there's not just single parents who are moms. There's single parents who are fathers as well. And I think as a society, or as a community, there's more that we can do so that we can support these families, and also families who aren't single parent families. There are some single parent families that are probably better off than or are more healthy mentally and physically than those who are two parents. So yeah, I definitely think it takes a community to raise a child, and the sooner we start putting that into action, the better it would be for our community and for our children going forward.
So, Andrew, bold question, bold answer. Would you consider? Would you concluded that we as a society has lost our way in relation to mental health and how we relate to people?
Sorry, do you mind saying that again?
Would you conclude that we as a society has lost our way in on the issue of mental health? Because Clive touched a really good point there. Back then we had no counselors. We basically didn't have much counselors to our disposal. But now we have so many counselors. It's like we have so many answers and limited questions and so little questions. That comes from based on your conversation this week. That's as a result of us not being open, like talking about our mental health issues. Because I can remember my problem started when I became the secret box of my mom. And not to say that my mom was a bad person. My mom is a giant of a mom. But somehow I kept it in for her, and because she just didn't want the society to look at her, you're actually being abused. So it was all between both of us. So
yeah, I think as a community, one of the things that sometimes it takes one person to start a ripple effect, and sometimes it just takes one person to stand up and say, this is my experience, for others to come forth. And I think the more honest we are, and I'm not saying we have to share our deepest, dark things that we don't want to share, but I think in terms of trying to educate our young people and protect them and help them to grow, the more honest we can be with them, the more we can prepare them for life, and the stronger relationships are going to be. And I think on the other hand as well, we can come closer as a community by sharing. We can come closer, and then we can use our experiences to help others. But I do agree that we've not done that. We've not. There's so much more we can do. Basically, there's so much more we can do.
Because I can remember talking about my issues of mental health to like people who I don't know here, and it was like, what? It's like, are you a madman? Because it's like I was being like, it's like I was saying too much, and it makes me like hold back and sort of relearn the culture that I was in. And probably that's something that some of us can do. But it needs, we definitely need that conversation, to have that conversation, share it. It's like, Christian community, we say to share your testimony. Basically share your goodness. Well, outside in the world, to share your story. And your success.
Alone. People feel alone, and I think you can be a walking testimony for someone else. And you can help someone to kind of reevaluate their entire perspective, because they can look at, I would never have guessed that person has gone through that, and look at how they've overcome certain things, or even, forget that they could feel more comfortable to come to you because you've been through something, and it might not be the same, and the experiences won't be the same, but they'll feel this person's not going to judge me because they've been through something as well. And sometimes I think as a community, we probably make it hard for people to come to us. And I don't think it's intentional, but I think sometimes sometimes I think we can make it hard for people to feel safe or comfortable to come to us with what they're facing. And most times it goes back to feeling whether are they going to be judged.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions from in the chat? Is there anybody else have a question that they want to ask? It could be from last night, from today's presentation. Is there anybody before we close? If not, Andrea, just want to thank you for being here with us for the week. I'm sure that we learned so much about mental health, and our minds has been revamped looking at the issue of mental health. So just want to thank you very much for being here with us. But just before we close, our host, Elder Andrew Crawford, will just have a little word for us here now.
Okay, thank you so much, Ron. Andrea, thank you so much for taking your time. We know you work in the daytime. You've got 2 young children, and you've come to present to us in the evening. So we just want to say thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And there have been some comments that have come to me privately that the listeners have really benefited from what you've had to share. So thank you very much. For all of our guests, listeners, participants, Veronica, Yvonne, Patty, Marlene, Joy, Marcia, Delia, Dee, Clive, Camille, C. Laney, and the team. Just want to say a massive thank you for being with us. If this is your first week, thank you for being with us for the whole week. If this is your first evening, thank you for being with us for this evening. There are some names that I saw on the very first night of the Master Plan for Healthy Communities. Veronica, you're all the way in the United States, and we just want to thank you for taking time out of your day every evening. I think I've seen you every evening, so thank you so much. And for everyone else that has been a part of this journey, I started 5 weeks ago and said, if you gave us an hour and a half of your time, then we would change your lives. And the fact that you're coming back night after night, week after week, is testament that your lives have been changed. So it's not so much a goodbye, but a farewell for now. This is the last session for this particular series, this 5-week series. We're going to take a little bit of a break. We are coming back, though. We are coming back at the end of November. So November the 21st, we're going to have 2 more weeks of programming. The posters are going to come out shortly. But we're going to focus more on spiritual health, well, predominantly on spiritual health. We're going to have 2 presenters. I'll be presenting the second week, so the last week of November into the first week of December, and our local pastor for this district, Pastor Ebenezer Daniel, will be presenting the big questions. That's the title of his presentations for the second to last week of November, the big questions. And my week will be the future. Your future is behind you. It's going to be a week of Bible prophecy and so many different things, but I don't want to share too much just yet, but you will see the poster. So again, I want to thank you for those that are watching online, on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us. We've had regular numbers on YouTube, and while I may not know everyone that's come, I'm guessing there are some regulars, so thank you for coming. And with that being said, like I said, we're not saying goodbye for now. It's just farewell for a few weeks. And we will be back the 21st of November for 2 more weeks of the Master Plan for Healthy Communities, dealing with predominantly spiritual health. So let's, for the last time for this series, let's just bow our heads while we thank God for what He's done for us.
Andrew, just before you close, just before you pray,
Go
can you
ahead.
remind our listeners about the where they can find information about this Master Plan series?
Yeah.
And other channel we may have, like Crisis Talk and other things.
Yeah. So if you want to rewatch any of the videos right from the very first week, the Master Plan for Healthy Communities does have a YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and you search the Master Plan for Healthy Communities, by now it's at the top of the search, so you'll find it, and every single video bar two from the first week will be on there. So Natalie Nash and James Luke from the first week, Kathleen's plant-based cooking classes the second week, God's Plan in a Global Pandemic, which was the third week, Health in the Man Daniel, which was last week, and then It's the Mind That Matters, which is this week. All of those are going to be on the YouTube channel. We also have a Facebook presence, which is Heal Thy Communities, or Healthy Communities. So you can, if you've got a Facebook page, please do like our page, and we'll keep you up to date with what we're doing. Kathleen, who did our plant-based cooking classes, also has a Facebook channel, Facebook page, Kathleen's Plant-Based Kitchen. So yeah, do look for her and those recipes on Facebook. Natalie Nash, the very first presenters, they have a ministry, Natural Healing from the Laws of Health. Maybe it's easier if I just put it in the chat, because it might be difficult for everyone to remember. So Natalie Nash, the ministry is called NHTLH. That's Natalie Nash and James Luke. And then Jackie Brown has a ministry called Medical Missionary Group. I have a ministry. So if you're on YouTube, then I'll put those in the chat there shortly. So I have a ministry called Crisis Talks Ministry. Also has a YouTube page, and a Facebook page. So please do check us out. And I think that's it. I think that's it. So the email address for the Healthy Communities, once again, is healthycommunities21, healthycommunities21 at gmail.com. So if you would like more information about what we've done, if you'd like to get in contact with any of our presenters, then you can email that email address, and we'll make sure that the information gets to the right people. If you are first time here, I don't think so. I'm looking through the participants now. I think everyone is returning, but I do see your request, Patty. But if there's anyone else that you think would like this information, then please do send an email to the Healthy Communities email, and we will get the information to you. I think that's about it. Von, is there anything else from your side?
No, that's it.
All right, excellent. Okay, so let's pray and bid farewell for a couple of weeks, and then we will see you back by God's grace, November the 21st. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for what you've done. We thank you for the information, the truth, the life-changing sessions that we've had for all of October and into November. And we just want to just give you all the praise and all the glory. We want to thank you for the presenters. We want to thank you for all those that have come. And dear God, we want to have healthy communities, healthy cities, and it begins by changing lives one person at a time. Because if we can change one person, we can change a home, we can change a street, we can change a town, a neighborhood. So I pray, Lord, that as we separate for now, for the next couple of weeks, just to air out and recollaborate, I pray, Lord, that you'll keep us safe. Bring us back when we start again for our final couple of sessions at the back end of November. We thank you for what you've done. Bless us all now, and the families, that we represent, is my prayer in Jesus' name.